The year was 2147, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Coalition for exactly 12 years. 12 long years of being treated like children. 12 years of insults, mockery, and contempt. Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole remembered the day Earth made first contact. The whole world had celebrated. They thought they were joining a family of advanced civilizations. They were wrong. They had joined a hierarchy, and humans were at the very bottom. Marcus stood in the cargo bay of the military station called Axiom Prime. He was checking supply crates while alien soldiers walked past him without a single glance. To them, he was invisible. Just another human doing work that no other species wanted to do. He was 34 years old, with scars on his hands and a calm look in his dark eyes. Before the Coalition, he had served 15 years in Force Recon Marines. He had fought in 3 wars on Earth. He had killed men in jungles, deserts, and frozen mountains. But here, in the stars, none of that mattered. Here, he was just a primitive ape who had learned to wear clothes. A group of Velthari soldiers marched through the cargo bay. They were impossible to miss. Each one stood over 8 feet tall with 4 muscular arms and bodies covered in natural armor plating. Their exoskeletons were dark green, and their eyes glowed with an orange light. They moved like they owned the station. In many ways, they did. The Velthari were the dominant military species in the Coalition. They had conquered dozens of worlds and believed themselves to be the greatest warriors in the galaxy. One of them bumped into Marcus as he walked past. The impact nearly knocked Marcus off his feet. The Velthari did not stop or apologize. He just made a sound that might have been a laugh and kept walking. His companions joined in the laughter. Marcus said nothing. He steadied himself and went back to work. He had learned patience in places far worse than this. He had learned to watch and wait. He had learned that the loudest enemy was often the weakest. That evening, Marcus ate dinner in the human section of the station. It was a small area with gray walls and flickering lights. The Coalition did not waste resources on human comfort. Around him sat 24 other human soldiers. They were the security detail for Earth's diplomatic mission. Their job was to stand guard and look professional. Nothing more. Private David Chen sat across from Marcus. He was young, maybe 22, with the eager eyes of someone who still believed in heroes. He pushed his food around his plate and shook his head. "I don't understand it, Sergeant," Chen said. "Back home, we're soldiers. We fought for our countries. We earned our ranks. But here, they treat us like we're nothing." Marcus took a bite of his food. It tasted like cardboard, but he had eaten worse. "They don't know what we are," he said quietly. "They see small bodies and soft skin. They see a species that only discovered space travel 100 years ago. They think they understand us. And they don't?" Marcus looked at the young private. "No, they don't, and that's their mistake." The next morning, Marcus was summoned to the office of Commander Thax Vorn. The Velthari war hero was in charge of all military operations on Axiom Prime. He had requested human soldiers for a supply run to the lower levels of the station. It was dirty work, dangerous work, the kind of work the Velthari would never do themselves. Marcus stood at attention in the commander's office. The room was large and filled with trophies from Thax Vorn's many victories. Skulls of enemy species lined the walls. Weapons hung in display cases. The message was clear. This was a killer's room. Thax Vorn sat behind a massive desk made of black stone. He was even larger than most Velthari, with scars across his armored face and one eye that had been replaced with a mechanical implant. He looked at Marcus the way a person might look at an insect. "You are the human sergeant," Thax Vorn said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole, sir." The Velthari made a dismissive gesture with one of his 4 hands. "Your ranks mean nothing here. You are human. That is all that matters." He pushed a datapad across the desk. "You will take your soldiers to level 47. There is equipment that needs to be moved. Some of the corridors are unstable. Some have toxic atmosphere. Try not to die. It would create paperwork." Marcus took the datapad without expression. "Understood, sir." Thax Vorn leaned forward. "Do you know why humans are given these tasks, Sergeant?" "No, sir. Because you are expendable. Your species contributes nothing to the Coalition. You have no advanced technology. You have no powerful weapons. You have no history of conquest. You are here because the Coalition felt pity for your primitive world. Nothing more." The commander's orange eyes burned with contempt. In 1,000 years, no one will remember that humans ever existed. Marcus met the commander's gaze. He did not look away. He did not blink. I understand. Sir. Something flickered in Thax Vorn's expression. For just a moment, he seemed uncertain. No human had ever looked at him like that before. But the moment passed, and he waved his hand in dismissal. Get out. Complete your task. Marcus turned and left the office. His heart was calm. His mind was clear. He had faced worse than alien bullies. He had faced death itself and walked away. Thax Vorn thought he was looking at a primitive animal. He had no idea what he was really looking at. The supply mission went badly. One of the corridors collapsed, trapping 3 human soldiers in a section filled with toxic gas. Marcus led the rescue himself. He held his breath for nearly 4 minutes while pulling his soldiers to safety. The Velthari medics were shocked. They said no species should be able to survive that long without oxygen. Marcus just shrugged and said humans were stubborn. Word spread through the station. Other species began to watch the humans more carefully. They noticed things they had missed before. The humans never complained. They never gave up. They worked together with a coordination that seemed almost telepathic. When one human struggled, others appeared to help without being asked. It was strange. It was unsettling. In the human quarters that night, Private Chen asked Marcus about the rescue. How did you do it, Sergeant? Hold your breath that long? Marcus sat on his bunk and looked at his hands. They were rough and calloused from years of work and war. Training, he said. Practice. Willpower. On Earth, we learn to push past our limits. We learn that the body can do more than the mind believes. We learn to survive. The Velthari don't understand that. No, they've never had to. They were born with armor and strength. They never had to earn it. Marcus looked up at Chen. That's their weakness, Private. They don't know what it means to struggle. They don't know what it means to fight for every breath. We do. Humans have been fighting since we climbed down from the trees. We fought predators. We fought nature. We fought each other. We never stopped. Chen was quiet for a moment. Do you think they'll ever respect us? Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Respect has to be earned, Private. Or taken. Sooner or later, we'll have to show them what we really are. He lay back on his bunk and closed his eyes. And when that day comes, they won't forget it. In his dreams that night, Marcus saw Earth. He saw the mountains and the oceans. He saw the battlefields where he had lost friends and taken lives. He saw the flag he had sworn to protect, and he knew, with absolute certainty, that the day was coming. The day when humans would stop bowing. The day when the galaxy would learn to fear the soldiers of Earth. That day was closer than anyone knew. 3 weeks passed on Axiom Prime. The tension between humans and Velthari grew worse every day. It started with small things. Human supplies went missing. Human soldiers were given the worst assignments. Human requests were ignored or delayed. But then the news came from Earth, and everything changed. A human transport ship had been attacked in neutral space. 200 civilians were dead. The ship had been carrying families to a new colony world. Children had died in the cold vacuum of space. The attacker was unknown, but evidence pointed to raiders who operated in Velthari territory. Earth demanded an investigation. The coalition refused. Marcus heard the news in the human quarters. He watched the faces of his soldiers as they learned about the dead. He saw anger. He saw grief. He saw something dangerous building behind their eyes. These were not politicians or diplomats. These were warriors. They had sworn oaths to protect their people. And their people had just been murdered while the galaxy looked away. Private Chen slammed his fist against the wall. They don't care. 200 people are dead, and they don't care. They never cared, said Corporal Williams, a woman with cold blue eyes and a sniper's patience. We've always been nothing to them. Marcus stood silent in the corner. He was watching. He was thinking. He was planning. The time was coming. He could feel it in his bones. The time for patience was almost over. The next day, the coalition announced a military ceremony. It would be held in the station's central atrium to honor Velthari victories in a recent border conflict. All species on the station were required to attend. Humans were told to stand at the back. They were told to remain silent. They were told to show respect. The central atrium was the largest space on Axiom Prime. It was a massive circular chamber with a ceiling made of transparent material that showed the stars above. Thousands of aliens filled the space. Velthari stood at the front in their gleaming armor. Behind them came the Korvathi, an ancient insect-like species with wise eyes and thin bodies. Then the Drakel, reptilian warriors with scaled skin and sharp teeth. Then dozens of other species, each in their assigned place according to their importance. The humans stood at the very back, near the exits. There were only 30 of them. They wore their dress uniforms, clean and pressed. Their medals shone on their chests. But no one looked at them. No one acknowledged their presence. Commander Thax Vorn took the stage at the center of the atrium. He stood under a spotlight, his massive body casting a long shadow. Behind him, holographic images showed Velthari soldiers in battle, ships exploding, enemies dying. It was a celebration of death. Thax Vorn raised his forearms for silence. The crowd obeyed instantly. "Today we honor the warriors of the Velthari Empire," he began. His voice echoed through the chamber. "For 10,000 years, we have been the sword of the coalition. We have conquered worlds. We have crushed rebellions. We have brought order to chaos. No species in the galaxy can match our strength. No species can challenge our dominance." The Velthari in the crowd roared their approval. Other species clapped politely. The humans remained silent. Thax Vorn continued his speech. He talked about Velthari history, Velthari honor, Velthari superiority. And then, without warning, he turned his attention to the back of the atrium. "I see we have guests today," he said with a cruel smile. "The humans have joined us. How generous of them to leave their cleaning duties." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not all species laughed, but enough did. The humans stood still as statues. "Perhaps we should educate our primitive friends," Thax Vorn continued. "Perhaps we should explain what real soldiers look like, what real warriors accomplish. After all, humans are new to the stars. They come from a tiny planet where they spent most of their history killing each other with sticks and stones. They learned to hold weapons by accident. They are soft-shelled prey animals who somehow survived long enough to build spaceships. The coalition allowed them to join out of pity. Nothing more." Marcus felt his soldiers growing tense. He heard their breathing quicken. He sensed their hands forming fists, but he did not move. Not yet. Thax Vorn stepped down from the stage and began walking toward the human section. The crowd parted before him like water. His orange eyes glowed with amusement and contempt. "Tell me, humans," he said as he approached. "Do you feel honored to be in the presence of real warriors? Do you understand how fortunate you are that we tolerate your existence?" The humans said nothing. They stood at attention, eyes forward. Thax Vorn stopped directly in front of Private Chen. The young soldier was breathing hard, his jaw tight with suppressed anger. The Velthari commander looked down at him like he was examining an insect. "This one has fire in his eyes," Thax Vorn said to the crowd. "Perhaps he disagrees with my assessment. Perhaps he thinks humans are mighty warriors." He leaned closer to Chen. "Do you have something to say, little human? Do you want to defend your pathetic species?" Chen's voice was barely a whisper. "We're not pathetic." Thax Vorn's eyes widened in mock surprise. "What did you say?" "He said nothing, Commander." Marcus stepped forward, his voice calm and clear. He meant no disrespect. The Velthari turned to look at Marcus. "Ah, the sergeant, the one who thinks he is brave." Thax Vorn moved to stand directly in front of Marcus. He towered over the human by nearly 3 feet. "You dare speak without permission? You dare address a Velthari commander as an equal?" "I meant no offense, sir. I was simply explaining." Thax Vorn's hand moved faster than Marcus could react. The slap caught him across the face with enough force to snap his head to the side. Marcus stumbled but did not fall. Blood ran from his split lip and dripped onto his uniform. The atrium went silent. Every eye was on them now. "That is how we deal with humans who forget their place," Thax Vorn announced to the crowd. "They are pets, animals. When they misbehave, they must be disciplined." Marcus straightened slowly. He wiped the blood from his chin and looked at the red stain on his fingers. Then he raised his eyes to meet Thax Vorn's gaze. "That was your one free shot," Marcus said quietly. Thax Vorn laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. "Free shot? You think you can threaten me? I have killed thousands of enemies, human. I have crushed skulls with my bare hands. I have ripped warriors apart. What can you possibly do to me?" Marcus did not answer immediately. He looked around the atrium at the thousands of aliens watching. He looked at his fellow humans standing behind him, their eyes burning with rage. He looked at Private Chen, who had been struck down moments before and was now climbing back to his feet. Then Marcus looked back at Thax Vorn and smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who had finally found its prey. "Commander Thax Vorn," Marcus said, his voice carrying through the silent chamber. "You have just made the biggest mistake of your life. You have insulted my species. You have struck my soldier. And now you have struck me." Thax Vorn snorted. "And what will you do about it, little human?" Marcus rolled his shoulders and cracked his neck. The sound was surprisingly loud in the quiet atrium. "I'm going to teach you something," Marcus said. "Something your species never learned because you never had to. I'm going to teach you what happens when you corner a human. I'm going to show you why our planet is covered in the graves of creatures that thought they were at the top of the food chain." He raised his fists and settled into a fighting stance. His eyes were cold and focused. "I'm going to show you what a human can do in 3 seconds." The crowd began to murmur. No human had ever challenged a Velthari. It was unthinkable. It was suicide. But Marcus Cole stood in the center of the atrium, bleeding and calm, ready to fight a monster twice his size. Thax Vorn's laugh faded. Something in the human's eyes made him hesitate, but only for a moment. He was a Velthari commander. He had nothing to fear from a soft-skinned primitive. "Very well," Thax Vorn said, spreading all 4 arms wide. "Let us show the galaxy what happens when animals challenge their betters." He raised one massive hand for another slap. It would be his last. The atrium was completely silent. Thousands of aliens held their breath as they watched the impossible scene before them. A human was challenging a Velthari commander to combat. It was madness. It was suicide. Every species knew that Velthari were unbeatable in close combat. Their natural armor could stop blades. Their 4 arms could tear enemies apart. Their strength was legendary. No sane creature would face one alone. But Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole was not insane. He was something far more dangerous. He was prepared. Commander Thax Vorn stood with his 4 arms spread wide, laughing at the small human before him. Marcus barely reached his chest. The Velthari's armored body weighed nearly 500 pounds. His claws could crush stone. His exoskeleton had survived plasma fire. How could this tiny, soft creature possibly hurt him? "Look at this," Thax Vorn announced to the crowd. "The human thinks he can fight. Perhaps we should give him a moment to reconsider, to beg for mercy. What do you say, little animal? Are you ready to apologize?" Marcus said nothing. He was breathing slowly and deeply. His heart rate was dropping. His muscles were loose and ready. He had entered the calm space that all warriors know. The place beyond fear. The place where training takes over and the body becomes a weapon. 2 years. That was how long Marcus had been watching the Velthari. Every fight, every training session, every movement. He had studied them like a scientist studies a new species. He had learned their strengths. More importantly, he had learned their weaknesses. The Velthari were powerful, but they were slow. They relied on their armor and strength. They had never faced an enemy who was faster, smarter, and willing to die. Thax Vorn raised his upper right arm for another slap. He moved slowly, deliberately, savoring the moment. He wanted the crowd to see. He wanted the humans to see their champion humiliated before he was destroyed. The hand swung down. Marcus moved. For the watching aliens, what happened next was almost too fast to follow. But for Marcus, time seemed to slow down. Every second stretched into an eternity. In the first second, Marcus dropped beneath the slap. Thax Vorn's massive hand passed over his head, hitting nothing but air. The Velthari had expected impact. He had expected the human to be knocked down. When neither happened, his balance shifted forward. It was a tiny movement, almost invisible, but it was enough. Marcus exploded upward from his crouch. His right hand was flat and rigid, fingers pressed together like a blade. He drove it into the soft tissue beneath Thax Vorn's lowest left arm, the spot where 4 thick nerve bundles met beneath a thin membrane of skin. There was no armor there. There never had been. The Velthari had evolved with natural protection everywhere except that one small spot. They had forgotten it existed. Marcus had not forgotten. Thax Vorn made a sound no one had ever heard before. It was not a scream. It was not a roar. It was a choking gasp of pure shock as agony exploded through his nervous system. His entire left side went numb. His legs buckled. His body began to fall forward. In the second, Marcus was already moving again. He pivoted on his left foot, using the momentum of his strike to spin his body. His right elbow came around like a hammer. He had practiced this movement 10,000 times. In the gym, in the shower, in his bunk when no one was watching. He had visualized it every night before sleep. The perfect angle, the perfect force, the perfect target. The target was a gap between the plates of Velthari's skull armor. It was located just behind the upper ear cavity, where the main cranial plate met the protective ridge. The gap was less than an inch wide. Most weapons could not fit through it. Most warriors could not hit it. But Marcus was not most warriors, and his elbow was not most weapons. The impact was devastating. Marcus put everything into the strike. Every year of training, every battle he had survived, every friend he had lost, every insult he had swallowed, every moment of human fury that had been building for 12 long years. In the third second, Commander Thax Vorn's skull shattered. The crack echoed through the atrium like thunder. Green blood sprayed from the wound as the Velthari's brain was destroyed instantly. His orange eyes went dark. His body, all 500 pounds of it, crashed to the floor with a sound like a falling tree. Thax Vorn was dead before he hit the ground. Marcus stood over the body, breathing hard but controlled. His uniform was splattered with alien blood. His right elbow throbbed with pain, but his eyes were clear. His hands were steady. He looked down at the creature who had mocked humanity, who had struck his soldiers, who had thought humans were prey. 3 seconds, Marcus said quietly. Just like I promised. The atrium remained frozen in stunned silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Every alien in the chamber stared at the impossible scene before them. A human had just killed a Velthari commander in hand-to-hand combat. It should not be possible. It could not be possible. But the body on the floor was very real. The first to react was a Velthari soldier near the front of the crowd. He roared in fury and charged toward Marcus, all 4 arms raised for attack. 3 more Velthari followed. They would tear the human apart. They would avenge their commander. Marcus did not run. He set his feet and prepared to face them. But before the Velthari could reach him, a voice cut through the chaos. Stop. The voice was old and powerful. It carried a weight of authority that made even the Velthari pause. Everyone turned to see a Korvathi elder stepping forward from the crowd. She was thin and frail-looking, with an exoskeleton that had faded to pale gray with age. Her compound eyes reflected the light of 1,000 stars. She walked with a staff that clicked against the floor with each step. I am Elder Zix Ara, of the Korvathi High Council, the old insect declared. I invoke the ancient laws of this coalition. No one will touch that human. The Velthari soldiers hesitated. The Korvathi were founders of the coalition. Their word carried more weight than any other species. But one soldier stepped forward, his voice shaking with rage. He murdered our commander. He must die. Elder Zix Ara turned her ancient eyes toward the soldier. Murdered? I saw no murder. I saw a challenge accepted and answered. She gestured toward the body of Thax Vorn. Your commander initiated physical dominance combat. He struck first. By the laws written by your own ancestors, the human was entitled to respond. He has broken no law. He has committed no crime. That law was not meant for humans. Another Velthari shouted. The law makes no distinction between species. The elder replied calmly. It applies to all members of the coalition. Humans are members. Therefore, the law protects them. This is finished. The Velthari soldiers looked at each other uncertainly. They wanted blood. They wanted revenge. But the elder was right. The ancient laws were clear. Thax Vorn had started the fight. He had paid the price. There was nothing they could do. Marcus stood alone in the center of the atrium, surrounded by the blood of his enemy. He looked at the Velthari soldiers who wanted to kill him. He looked at the other species who stared at him with new eyes. Then he looked at his fellow humans, standing tall at the back of the chamber. Humans do not submit, Marcus said, loud enough for everyone to hear. We do not bow. We do not break. We come from a planet that tried to kill us every day for 1,000,000 years. We survived ice ages. We survived predators. We survived each other. We are the descendants of warriors who painted their faces with blood and charged into battle knowing they might die. We are the children of soldiers who held impossible positions against overwhelming odds. We are the legacy of every human who ever stood up and said no more. He pointed at the body of Thax Vorn. This is what happens when you push us too far. This is what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. We are not pets. We are not animals. We are humans. And now you know what that means. The atrium remained silent as Marcus walked back to his soldiers. They parted to let him through, then closed ranks behind him. 30 humans standing together, unbowed and unbroken. Behind them, the galaxy watched and understood something it had never understood before. Humans were not prey. Humans were the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever seen, and they had just announced their presence to the stars. The hours after the fight were chaos. Velthari soldiers demanded justice. Coalition security forces surrounded the human quarters. Diplomats shouted at each other in a dozen languages. News of what happened spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. By morning, every inhabited planet knew the name Marcus Cole. Marcus sat alone in a holding room on Axiom Prime. It was not a prison cell. Elder Zixara had made sure of that. But armed guards stood outside the door, and he was not allowed to leave. He sat on a metal bench and waited. He had done what needed to be done. Now he would face whatever came next. The door opened, and Elder Zixara entered. She moved slowly on her thin legs, her staff clicking against the floor. Behind her came a Velthari general with golden marks on his armor, and 3 other aliens that Marcus did not recognize. They were members of the Coalition High Council, the beings who ruled the galaxy. Marcus stood and faced them without fear. Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole, Elder Zixara said, "You have been summoned before representatives of the Coalition High Council to answer for your actions. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." The Velthari general stepped forward. His name was Krax Thor, and he was one of the most powerful military leaders in the galaxy. His orange eyes burned with controlled rage. "You killed Commander Thax Vorn," Krax Thor said. "A decorated hero of the Velthari Empire. A soldier who served the Coalition for 300 years. You ended his life in front of thousands of witnesses. What do you have to say?" Marcus met the general's gaze. "He started the fight. I finished it." Krax Thor's jaw tightened. "You expect us to believe that you killed a Velthari commander in 3 seconds? By accident? By luck? No, General. There was no luck involved." Marcus kept his voice calm and steady. "I have been studying Velthari combat techniques and anatomy for 2 years. I identified weaknesses in your species' physical structure. When the commander attacked me, I exploited those weaknesses. Every movement was planned. Every strike was calculated. I did not get lucky. I was prepared." The room went silent. The council members exchanged glances. This was not what they had expected. They had expected fear. They had expected apologies. They had expected a frightened human begging for mercy. "You planned this?" asked one of the other council members, a small furry creature with large black eyes. "You intended to kill him?" "I intended to defend myself and my soldiers," Marcus said. "The commander had struck one of my men. Then he struck me. Under your own laws, I had the right to respond. I chose to respond effectively." Elder Zixara leaned forward on her staff. "You studied our allies? You searched for ways to kill them?" "With respect, Elder, I studied potential threats. Humans have only been in the Coalition for 12 years. We have been treated with contempt, assigned dangerous work, and denied the respect given to other species. Our transport ships have been attacked. Our civilians have been murdered, and the Coalition has done nothing to help us." Marcus paused and looked at each council member in turn. "My people needed to know that we could defend ourselves. I made sure we could." Krax Thor slammed his fist on the table. "This is an admission of planned violence against Coalition species. He should be executed." "Under what law?" Elder Zixara asked quietly. "He has admitted to studying. Studying is not a crime. He has admitted to planning a defense. Planning is not a crime. When violence occurred, it was initiated by Commander Thax Vorn, not by this human. Everything he did was legal under Coalition law. The laws were not designed to protect humans. The laws were designed to protect all members of the Coalition. Humans are members. The laws apply to them equally." The Elder's voice hardened. "Unless you are suggesting that humans should not have equal protection under our laws, General, that would be a very dangerous position to take." Krax Thor fell silent. He could not argue against the founding principles of the Coalition without undermining his own authority. The small, furry council member spoke again. "Staff Sergeant Cole, what do you want? What is the purpose of this demonstration?" Marcus took a deep breath. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The moment when humanity would finally be heard. "I want respect," he said. Not for myself. For my species. For 12 years, humans have been treated as lesser beings. We have been given the worst assignments. We have been mocked and insulted. We have been attacked without consequence. This stops now. He stepped forward, and the guards tensed. But Marcus made no threatening moves. He simply stood tall and spoke clearly. Humans are not weak. We are not primitive. We are not prey. On our planet, we survived ice ages that killed 90% of all life. We hunted creatures 10 times our size with nothing but wooden spears. We built civilizations, destroyed them, and built them again. We split the atom. We cured diseases that killed millions. We walked on our moon before we had computers in our pockets. Marcus pointed at the council members. Every human is the descendant of 1,000 generations of survivors. Every human carries the genetic legacy of warriors, hunters, and conquerors. We did not become the dominant species on Earth by being gentle. We did it by being smart, adaptable, and absolutely relentless. He lowered his hand. The Coalition has underestimated us from the beginning. That ends today. I killed Thax Vorn in 3 seconds because I studied him. I watched him. I learned him. That is what humans do. We observe. We adapt. We overcome. Any species that threatens us will face the same fate. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Elder Zixara made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You are an interesting species," she said. "In my 400 years of life, I have never seen anyone speak to the council with such boldness. Most would call it foolishness. With respect, Elder, there is a difference between foolishness and confidence. I know what my species is capable of. I am not afraid to say it." Kraxthor leaned back in his chair, studying Marcus with new eyes. "You truly believe humans can match the Velthari in combat? One-on-one? Sometimes, as a team?" Marcus smiled slightly. "General, humans invented a concept called combined arms warfare. We coordinate infantry, armor, artillery, and air support into a single fighting force. We attack from multiple directions at multiple levels simultaneously. We use deception, ambush, and psychological warfare. We fight dirty when we have to, and we never, ever, give up." He met Kraxthor's gaze directly. "I killed your commander alone because I had to prove a point. But in a real war, humans would not send one soldier. We would send armies. We would send scientists to study your weaknesses, engineers to build weapons designed specifically to kill you, strategists who have spent their entire lives learning how to destroy enemies stronger than themselves. You have been the dominant military power for 10,000 years because no one has seriously challenged you. Think very carefully before you challenge us." The silence stretched on. The council members looked at each other with uncertainty and something that might have been fear. Finally, Elder Zixara spoke. "The council will consider your words, Staff Sergeant Cole. You are free to return to your quarters, but be warned. The Velthari will not forget this day. They will seek satisfaction." "I know," Marcus said. "I'm counting on it." He turned and walked out of the room. Behind him, the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in shocked silence, trying to understand what had just happened. They had brought a human in to answer for killing one of their commanders. He had walked out after threatening to destroy their entire military if they pushed humanity too far. And the worst part was, they were starting to believe he could do it. The Velthari demanded satisfaction. They invoked an ancient ritual called the Trial of Supremacy. It was a combat competition held once every 100 years to determine the military ranking of coalition species. No species had ever challenged Velthari dominance. They had won every trial for the past 3,000 years. Now they wanted to crush humanity in front of the entire galaxy. The rules were simple. Each species would send their champions to compete in 5 challenges: endurance, strategy, single combat, squad tactics, and finally, survival. On a death world, the winners would gain full military recognition in the coalition. The losers would be stripped of their military status forever. Earth accepted the challenge. Marcus Cole stood in the human staging area on the neutral planet where the trial would be held. Around him stood 11 other warriors. They had been chosen from every corner of Earth. There was Sergeant First Class Johnson, a Green Beret who had survived 3 deployments in the worst war zones on the planet, Captain Nakamura, a Japanese Special Forces officer who moved like water and struck like lightning, Corporal Singh, a Gurkha whose family had been warriors for 500 years, Lieutenant Volkov, a Spetsnaz commando who had killed men in the frozen wastes of Siberia. Lieutenant Rosen, an Israeli Shayetet 13 operative who specialized in impossible missions, and 7 more. Each one a legend in their own right. Each one the best of the best that humanity could offer. Marcus looked at his team and felt something he had not felt in a long time. Pride. The Velthari expect to face one champion, he said. That's how every other species has done it. One warrior representing their entire people. And we are sending 12. Captain Nakamura said with a slight smile. They will not know what to do with us. That's the idea. Marcus checked his equipment one final time. Humans don't fight alone. We never have. We survive because we work together. We protect each other. We sacrifice for each other. That's our greatest weapon. Not strength. Not speed. Unity. The first challenge was endurance. The competitors had to cross a desert of black sand under 3 suns. The temperature reached 150 degrees. Water was limited. Most species dropped out within hours. The Velthari champion marched forward alone, relying on his natural armor to protect him from the heat. He lasted longer than most. But eventually, even his massive body failed. He collapsed 20 miles from the finish line. The human team finished together. They had rationed their water. They had taken turns carrying the weakest among them. They had moved during the cooler hours and rested during the worst heat. They crossed the finish line as a unit, battered and exhausted but alive. The galaxy watched in disbelief. The second challenge was strategy. Each team had to command a simulated battle using holographic forces. The Velthari approach was simple. Overwhelming force, direct assault, crush the enemy with superior numbers. The human approach was different. Captain Nakamura led the strategic planning. She divided their forces into small units. She used the terrain. She set traps. She created false targets and ambush points. When the Velthari forces charged forward, they were surrounded and destroyed piecemeal. The Velthari commander stared at the holographic display in confusion. He could not understand what had happened. His forces had been larger. His warriors had been stronger. How had he lost? Marcus explained it to him afterward. You fought the battle you wanted to fight. We fought the battle we designed. That's the difference between strength and strategy. The third challenge was single combat. Each team sent one champion to fight in an arena. The Velthari sent their greatest warrior, a giant named Thax Morn, who was the brother of the commander Marcus had killed. He wanted revenge. He wanted blood. The humans sent Corporal Singh. The Gurkha was small compared to the Velthari. He carried only his traditional kukri blade. He wore no armor. He looked like a child facing a monster. The fight lasted 45 seconds. Singh did not try to match the Velthari's strength. He did not block the massive arms or try to overpower his opponent. Instead, he moved. He ducked. He rolled. He slipped around every attack like smoke through fingers. And every time he moved, his kukri found flesh, cut after cut, slash after slash. The Velthari grew weaker as green blood poured from a dozen wounds. He grew desperate. He grew sloppy. And when he finally overextended, Singh struck. The kukri took off Taxmorn's head in a single clean cut. Singh cleaned his blade, bowed to his fallen opponent, and walked out of the arena without a word. The fourth challenge was squad tactics. Both teams were dropped into a hostile environment filled with automated defenses and had to capture a central objective. The Velthari team had 20 warriors. The humans had 12. It was not a fair fight. The humans moved through the environment like ghosts. Lieutenant Volkov disabled security systems with techniques he had learned in Russia. Lieutenant Rosen identified patrol patterns and created openings. The rest of the team moved in perfect coordination, using hand signals and silent communication. The Velthari team never saw them coming. One by one, they were eliminated. Silently, efficiently, professionally. By the time the Velthari commander realized what was happening, he was alone. Surrounded by 12 humans who had appeared from nowhere, he surrendered. It was the first time a Velthari had ever surrendered to another species. The fifth and final challenge was survival. Both teams were dropped on a death world called Nexar 7. It was a planet of extreme temperatures, toxic atmosphere, and predators that had killed every species that had ever tried to colonize it. The teams had to survive for 30 days. The team with the most surviving members would win. The Velthari set up a defensive camp and tried to wait out the challenge. They relied on their natural strength to fight off predators. They conserved their supplies and stayed in one place. Within 2 weeks, half of them were dead. The humans did something different. They did not hide. They did not wait. They explored. They learned the planet. They studied the predators and found their weaknesses. They discovered which plants were edible and which were poison. They built shelters from native materials. They made weapons from the bones of animals they killed. By day 20, they had established a permanent camp with fresh water, reliable food sources, and defensive barriers. By day 25, they had mapped most of the surrounding area. By day 30, they walked out of the wilderness healthy, fed, and ready for more. All 12 humans survived. The trial of supremacy was over. Humanity had won. The ceremony was held on Axiom Prime, in the same atrium where Marcus had killed Commander Thax Vorn. Thousands of aliens watched as the Coalition High Council officially recognized humanity as a full military member. Earth would have a seat on the military council. Human soldiers would no longer be treated as lesser beings. The galaxy would remember this day forever. Elder Zixara herself presented the honor to Marcus Cole. "Staff Sergeant," she said, "you have shown the galaxy what your species is capable of. You have earned this victory not through luck or numbers, but through skill, determination, and unity. The Coalition welcomes humanity as equals." Marcus accepted the honor on behalf of his team. He looked out at the crowd of aliens who had once mocked his species. Many of them were looking at him with new eyes. Fear, respect, curiosity. "We do not want war," Marcus said, his voice carrying through the atrium. "We never wanted conflict. We came to the stars hoping to find friends and allies. We found contempt instead. But that changes today. Humanity stands ready to work alongside any species that treats us with respect. We will be loyal friends and valuable partners." He paused and let his gaze sweep across the crowd. "But we will also be dangerous enemies. Remember that. Remember what 12 humans did against the greatest military power in the galaxy. Remember what happened when you pushed us too far. And think very carefully before you make that mistake again." The ceremony ended. The crowds dispersed. But Marcus remained in the atrium, looking out the window at the stars. Corporal Singh joined him, standing in comfortable silence. "Do you think they understand now?" Singh asked. "Some of them," Marcus said. "Others will need more convincing." "That's fine. We have time." A young Velthari soldier approached them. She was small for her species, barely 7 feet tall, with bright orange eyes and armor that still had the shine of youth. She stopped a respectful distance away and bowed her head. "Staff Sergeant Cole," she said. "I am Kira Veth. I watched the trial. I watched everything. I wanted to ask you a question." Marcus turned to face her. "Ask. How did your species become so dangerous? You are small. You are soft. You have no natural weapons. How did you survive? How did you become what you are?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. He thought about Earth. He thought about the ice ages and the predators. He thought about the wars and the plagues. He thought about every generation of humans who had fought and died so that their children could live. "We were never safe," he said finally. "From the moment we climbed down from the trees, something was trying to kill us. The cold tried to freeze us. The heat tried to burn us. Animals tried to eat us. Diseases tried to destroy us. And when there were no external enemies, we fought each other." He looked out at the stars. "Your species evolved with armor and strength. You were built for war. We were not. We had to learn. We had to adapt. We had to become something that could survive on a planet that wanted us dead. That process never stopped. For 1,000,000 years, only the strongest, smartest, and most determined humans survived long enough to have children. We are the descendants of 1,000,000 years of evolution by violence." He turned back to Kira Veth. "You trained for war. We were forged by it. That is the difference. That is why humans are dangerous. And that is why the galaxy should have been nicer to us from the beginning." Kira Veth was silent for a long moment. Then she bowed again, lower than before. "Thank you, Staff Sergeant. I will remember your words." She turned and walked away. Marcus watched her go, then returned his gaze to the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was spinning in its orbit. Billions of humans were living their lives, unaware of what had happened. But things would change. The word would spread. Humanity would take its place among the stars, not as servants or victims, but as warriors and equals. Marcus Cole smiled. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humans were not to be underestimated. Never again.